Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Shri Gaura Hari ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranjaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Shrinvata Svagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtaneha Hridyastasto Hi Abhadrani Vidunoti Suratsatam Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. So we are speaking this week from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, just as a precursor to the wonderful celebration of the Lord's divine appearance, Sri Krishna Janmastami, on Saturday. Today we will be focusing on the ending of the 3rd chapter of the 10th canto, entitled The Birth of Lord Krishna, and the first 2 verses of the 4th chapter, entitled The Atrocities of King Kamsa. So the section we're speaking on today, the theme for today's class is entitled Crossing Over, and it focuses on that part of the Srimad Bhagavatam where the Lord has appeared in the prison cell to Devaki and Vasudeva, and in his 4-armed Vishnu form, and Devaki and Vasudeva have offered many, many wonderful prayers to the Lord, and the Lord has spoken to them and reminded them of their previous births, where this is actually not the first time that the Lord has appeared as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. In 2 prior births, he appeared as their son. The first one as a personality called Prishni Garba, and then as Vamana Dev. And now as Lord Krishna, he is appearing for the 3rd time as their son. And the Lord concludes his speaking to them by saying that even though I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, please always think of me constantly with affection as your son, and in this way you will achieve perfection. The part we'll be focusing on today is what happens after that, how Vasudeva carries baby Krishna across the river Yamuna in the dead of the night to exchange the babies in Nanda Maharaj's house. And just we're going to touch on Kamsa's reaction to what is happening. So I'll just read all of the verses. We'll read from text chapter 3, text 46 to the end of that chapter, and then the first 2 verses of the 4th chapter. So I'll just read all the translations first so we can have a flow of what is happening, and then one by one we can just discuss on each verse. I won't read the purports to all the verses, obviously, because there's quite a few verses and some lengthy purports, but we'll just summarize what's been happening. So text 46. Shukadev Goswami said, after thus instructing his father and mother, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna remained silent. In their presence, by his internal energy, he then transformed himself into a small human child. In other words, he transformed himself into his original form, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Text 47. Thereafter, exactly when Vasudeva, being inspired by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was about to take the newborn child from the delivery room, Yogamaya, the Lord's spiritual energy, took birth as the daughter of the wife of Maharaj Nanda. By the influence of Yogamaya, all the doorkeepers fell fast asleep, their senses unable to work, and the other inhabitants of the house also fell deeply asleep. When the sun rises, the darkness automatically disappears. Similarly, when Vasudeva appeared, the closed doors, which were strongly pinned with iron and locked with iron chains, opened automatically. Since the clouds in the sky were mildly thundering and showering, Anantanaga, an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, followed Vasudeva, beginning from the door, with hoods expanded to protect Vasudeva and the transcendental child. Because of the constant rain sent by the demigod Indra, the river Yamuna was filled with deep water, foaming about with fiercely whirling waves. But as the great Indian Ocean had formally given way to Lord Ramachandra by allowing him to construct a bridge, the river Yamuna gave way to Vasudeva and allowed him to cross. When Vasudeva reached the house of Nanda Maharaj, he saw that all the cowherd men were fast asleep. Thus he placed his own son on the bed of Yashoda, picked up her daughter, an expansion of Yogamaya, and then returned to his residence, the prison house of Kamsa. Vasudeva placed the female child on the bed of Devaki, bound his legs with the iron shackles, and thus remained there as before. Exhausted by the labor of childbirth, Yashoda was overwhelmed with sleep and unable to understand what kind of child had been born to her. Shukadeva Goswami continued, "My dear King Parikshit, the doors inside and outside the house closed as before. Thereafter, the inhabitants of the house, especially the watchmen, heard the crying of the newborn child and thus awakened from their beds. Thereafter, all the watchmen very quickly approached King Kamsa, the ruler of the Bhoja dynasty, and submitted the news of the birth of Devaki's child. Kamsa, who had awaited this news very anxiously, immediately took action." So as we said, Krishna has responded to the prayers of Devaki and Vasudeva, and now we're speaking from text 46. We see that he remains silent, and through his internal energy, he transforms himself into a small human child. And it's very interesting, in brackets it says, in other words, in the translation, he transformed himself into his original form. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So this purport, Prabhupada is speaking about the wonderful internal or spiritual energy of the Lord. That whatever the Lord does is by his own internal will. He's never forced or pushed to do anything. He can do anything and everything he likes, including change his form without dying. If we want to, okay, in the modern age, you can have some kind of surgery and, change the way you look and this and that. But Krishna, the Supreme Lord, by his internal energy, just by his manifestation, he can go from a four-armed Vishnu form into a human-like child, just, without even snapping a finger, you could say. And everything is orchestrated by his divine potency, not by chance or luck or anything like that. Everything is very intentional when it is done by the Lord. And in the purport, Prabhupada says that actually this is the difference between the Lord and the living entity. That simply by his potency, he can do whatever he likes. And Prabhupada speaks about Jiva Goswami's commentary. And Jiva Goswami says that to understand the Lord, or to begin to understand the Lord, we first of all have to accept that he is inconceivable. We have to accept his inconceivability and just accept that actually the Lord is beyond our words and the conception of our words and our mind. We have to start there, right? And when he changes his body, as the verse is speaking about, from the four-armed Vishnu into the human child, it's not that it's a material body. It's completely spiritual. Krishna can change into anything he likes. And this verse, the conclusion of the translation, he transformed himself actually into his original form. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. We know this verse from the third canto. Like it is, you could say, the main verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, what's often sometimes referred to as the Parivas Sutra, the essence of a scripture. The essence of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. And if you go back to that verse in the third canto, it's in a chapter that is describing, firstly, the various incarnations of Krishna. They take us through all the categories of incarnations and the classifications and so on and so forth. And the conclusion after all of that is that Krishna's incarnations are unlimited, like the waves in the ocean. But even after going through all of those incarnations, the conclusion is that Krishna is Swayam. So prior to this, after the prayers of Devaki and Vasudeva, it is Krishna, but it's actually Lord Vishnu who is responding to Devaki and Vasudeva. And it's interesting that after Lord Vishnu has spoken, he goes back, and the Lord takes his form as baby Krishna. And Prabhupada refers to the internal energy that is doing this as the Lord's Atma Maya. He calls it the Atma Maya. Krishna can do so much with his internal and external energy. I was just thinking, what can we do with our energy? We're very limited in the things we can do, but Krishna's energy is inconceivable. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by speaking about the deity form of the Lord, the Archa Murti. That just see the potency of Krishna's energy, that it can be a form in front of you, that it is stone or is wood, it doesn't matter, because that is still Krishna in completion. There is actually no difference between the Lord himself and his deity form, because it is invested with the Lord's energy. There is no difference. Krishna can come, and Prabhupada says, I like this part. Prabhupada says in the purport, Krishna can come in any form he likes, but it is up to us to know the facts and to understand Krishna. So Krishna is there, but it's on us, the onus is on us to actually put in the effort to getting to understand who Krishna really is. And Prabhupada concludes that we can make our life successful and understand Krishna by following the Guru, the sadhus, and so on and so forth, rendering devotional service. Which I thought was very nice, the conclusion of that it is up to us to know the facts of who Krishna is and to understand Krishna in that way. So then the next verse, where we see now Vasudeva, when he was inspired by the Lord and takes the newborn child and, begins to get ready for his journey, at that very moment in Vrindavan, Yogamaya appears as the daughter of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. In the purport, Prabhupada is saying that, when it comes to the birth of Lord Krishna, different acharyas give different opinions and commentaries. So in this verse, or in this translation, the translation is that when Vasudeva is about to take the newborn child, that is when Yogamaya is born. But according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that the birth of Krishna and Yogamaya was actually a simultaneous event. And Prabhupada speaks then that Krishna appears first as the son of Devaki, but he doesn't just appear as Krishna. He first appears as Vishnu, and then he transforms. And it's because Vasudeva and Devaki, even though they are credited with being the parents of the Lord, and like I said, this is not the first time the Lord has appeared as their son, they are not in a position of pure, true affection for the Lord. They have that awe and reverence because they know that their child is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So their love is tinged with that awe and reverence for the Lord himself. But Prabhupada says that actually this is the difference between, you could say, Yashoda and Devaki, and why Mother Yashoda is considered far more superior, because she loved Krishna for Krishna without understanding his Godhead in any way. Her love for him wasn't tinged with any awe and reverence in that, oh, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and, this kind of high regard. She just had this pure love, Prabhupada says, without understanding his Godhead. And that is actually what true love is at the end of the day. Just loving the person for who they are. Right? You could say Yashoda just loved Krishna for Krishna, for all of his naughtiness, his playfulness, his pastimes, so on and so forth. And I was thinking, while I was listening, obviously, to some lectures to prepare, and the one lecture was on this verse was speaking about how, for us in Kali Yuga, for us to, to engage with, to be happy, to be peaceful, to find that love and that fulfillment, our senses have to be involved in some way to find that pleasure in the world. And even like to some degree, your mind has to be involved. And the point maybe we can take from this, or what we should think about, is how can we make our life perfect simply by, or working towards understanding Krishna just as Krishna, or who he really is, right? For us, right, we get into relationships with people, we try to understand people because whether it's conscious or unconscious, we can benefit from the other person. Relationships are about that give and take. What can I get from this? What do I have to put into this? So on and so forth. But for the devotee, we have to come to the point of understanding my Guru Maharaj says, what is the payoff for understanding Krishna? And that is what the Srimad Bhagavatam presents to us, that understanding Krishna with or without his Godhead, but just understanding Krishna as he is what life is actually all about, right? If you're in a relationship with someone and they are just inattentive and not interested and not present and apathetic and, you're going to get pretty frustrated. It's going to feel stale after some times, and you're going to wonder why is this person with me, But actually, for the devotee, our life is measured by how deeply we understand Krishna in that sense, right? And if you're really not motivated to know Krishna just for the sake of knowing him, sometimes it's going to be hard to build that relationship. Because you come to him and you start praying, oh Krishna, we come, I'm going through difficulty, please help me, I need this, I need that. And sometimes there's no response, and then you feel like, well, you're not interested in me. But Krishna's also saying, well, you're not interested in me either. You're just coming here and offloading, and you want this and you want that, but do you care about me? So that was my takeaway, that we should get to understand Krishna for Krishna. So yes, Vasudeva is now inspired by the Lord to take the baby and go to the house of Nanda Maharaj. And then we come to a very interesting 2 verses where we see the energy of Yoga Maya, the influence of Yoga Maya at work, where all the doorkeepers are fast asleep. And it's so interesting, the Shri Shri Radhanath ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Shri Gaura Hari ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All the doorkeepers are fast asleep, and not even just fast asleep, their senses are unable to work. It's one thing to be in a deep sleep, but you can be woken up, your sleep can break. But in this case, the influence of Yoga Maya is so strong that none of their senses are even working, which I thought was quite interesting. And not just, the doorkeepers, everyone in the house fell into such a deep sleep. And you would think, because, during this whole time, it's late in the night and there's a storm happening. We read that the sky is filled with dark clouds, it's thundering and it's showering, the constant rain of Indra, the river Yamuna is whirling about with all of these waves. I'm sure, and when it's quite a storm, the animals, they get worked up. You hear the birds, the frogs, and this is, I guess, the jungle, there's elephants, there's all of these animals. So there's quite a cacophony going on, even just with the rain. But no one can hear anything. Their senses are unable to work at all. But as soon as Vasudeva picks the baby up and walks towards the closed doors, they just automatically open. And they've been bolted shut with iron chains, which is, I'm sure they're very, very heavy, strongly pinned with iron and locked with iron chains. They just automatically fly open, right? And because of the rain, Anantanaga appears and protects the Lord. And right from the doorway, the Lord hasn't even stepped out, hasn't even gotten a chance to get wet or anything. Anantashesha is right there, waiting, and goes and expands his hood, not just to protect the Lord, but the verse says also to protect Vasudeva and the transcendental child. Not just the Lord alone, but both of them. And this purport is very, very short. Prabhupada just says that the Sheshanaga is an expansion of the Supreme Lord whose business is to serve the Lord with all necessary paraphernalia. So when Vasudeva was carrying the child, Sheshanaga came to serve the Lord and protect him from the showers of rain. But I thought it was so beautiful that not, in the translation, not just the Lord, but the Lord and his devotee. And that's the mood that service brings, that yes, it is my only business to serve the Lord in any way I can, but it's also my business to serve those who serve the Lord as well. And it's like Anantashesh, he's such an exalted personality, if I could say, the direct expansion of the Lord. All of the Lord lies on him in the milk ocean. Another expansion, all the universes are bobbing on his head and like tiny mustard seeds. He's not a small person or personality by any means, but still he is there rendering, if you could say, menial service. He's an umbrella, not just for the Lord, but for the devotee as well. So yes, this aspect of service is coming out, and also like we were speaking about the influence of Yoga Maya, we're getting some insight into that. So we know that there's Yoga Maya and there's Mahamaya. One is the spiritual aspect of the Lord's energy, which is the Yoga Maya, and then Mahamaya is in the material world. The energy here is referred to as Mahamaya. But Prabhupada gives the example that they work, quote unquote, in the same way, in the way electricity will power a heater and a fan. Electricity is the same, but the result from what's coming out is different. One keeps you warm, one keeps you cool. So Prabhupada says the Yoga Maya and Mahamaya are like that. It's the same foundation, but the output or the result is different, this material and spiritual energy. In Yoga Maya, we can see Prabhupada also says that Yoga Maya specifically covers the intelligence of non-devotees, so that they actually don't understand who Krishna is when he's on the planet. And you would see, when Krishna was, present on the planet 5,000 years ago, I'm sure millions of people saw him, interacted with him, or heard about him in that. But it was actually only a very small handful of people who actually knew who Krishna truly was, right? And that is Yoga Maya's covering. So she can actually help us, Prabhupada says, to lift the curtain of our ignorance, to know who Krishna really is. Prabhupada says that Yoga Maya can help the surrendered soul to know Krishna, but in proportion to their surrender. So again, as Prabhupada was saying earlier, it's up to us to know the facts, right? Again, the onus is on us to want to understand Krishna, to want to surrender to him. And accordingly, we know in the Bhagavad Gita as well, Prabhupada says that, or Krishna says that according to that level, that proportion of surrender, Krishna will help. And so will all of his expansions. We see Yoga Maya will help. Anantanaga will also come, right? Krishna helps accordingly. His associates, his agents help accordingly. So we are always under the influence of one of Krishna's energy, whether it's Yoga Maya or Mahamaya, but we're always being influenced by that. But for the devotee, again, they don't really want to have this in the front of their mind that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead all of the time, because that awe and reverence, it sometimes gets in the way of the mood of genuine, intimate love. So Yogamaya is there to help the devotee in that way, and also to please Krishna, that Krishna just wants to be loved for who he is. So Yogamaya helps with that. Text 50 did not have a purport, but I thought it was a very beautiful description anyway, that because of the constant rain sent by the demigod Indra, the river Yamuna was filled with deep water, foaming about with fiercely whirling waves. I'm sure you can imagine, you've been to the beach on a very windy day, and the sand just flies and hits you, and you take a dive in and you get pushed aside by the wave, the current is too strong, like that. But just as the Indian Ocean had given way to Lord Ramachandra to build a bridge, the river Yamuna gave way to Vasudeva. When the Lord comes, everyone must just surrender. No matter what, Krishna's will always prevail in that way. And then Vasudeva crosses the river through the middle of the storm, and he reaches the house of Nanda Maharaj. And when he reaches the house, he sees there as well all of the cowherd men, all of the inhabitants, everyone is just fast asleep. Again, Yogamaya is there. So while everyone is fast asleep, he, sneaks into the house very quietly. And he places his own son on the bed of Yashoda, picks up the daughter, who is the expansion of Yogamaya, and then goes back to the prison. This was a very interesting purport. Prabhupada says that Vasudeva knew very well that as soon as the daughter was in the prison house of Kamsa, Kamsa would immediately kill her. But to protect his own child, he had to kill the child of his friend. Nanda Maharaj was his friend, but, out of deep affection and attachment for his own son, he knowingly did this. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that one cannot be blamed for protecting one's own child at the sacrifice of another's. Ooh, I do not recommend we do that in this age. Furthermore, Vasudeva cannot be accused of callousness since his actions were impelled by the force of Yogamaya. Again, this is Krishna's energy at work. We have no power over that energy. Whether it's Yogamaya or Mahamaya, all we can do is surrender to what Krishna is bringing in front of us and pray that we're acting in a way that it is pleasing or inspired by him. So this part, I guess this is the, could say the crux or the main part of what the topic is about, crossing over, where Nanda Maharaj is crossing over the Yamuna, Vasudeva is crossing over the Yamuna, exchanging the babies, and there are many different commentators, many Goswamis, there's a bit of debate, or not debate, but there's many differing opinions, and that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. There's many ways to understand one thing, right? There's enough to keep your brain going for the rest of your life. There's no time to say that you understand everything there is to know about Krishna, because even there are so many commentaries. So, some commentators say yes, Vishnu appeared in the prison cell and then transformed into the baby in the prison cell that Vasudeva picked up. That baby is Vasudeva Krishna, right? So that Vasudeva Krishna is going on, and then while Vasudeva is in the middle of the Yamuna crossing through, again, this is the Lord's energy, he drops the baby. Imagine, he drops the baby in this complete whirlwind of waves, and he loses the baby for a good few seconds. Right? So he drops the baby in and he's panicking, he's in anxiety, it's dark, it's the middle of the night, he can't see anything. But then suddenly he feels something on his leg and then he looks and it's the baby. So he picks the baby up. And that baby that he picks up is Yashoda Krishna. Some commentators say that Vasudeva Krishna goes in and then Yashoda Krishna comes out. Other commentators say that Mother Yashoda gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. And when Vasudev came, he didn't see the boy or the twin, he only saw the girl. So when he put his Vasudeva Krishna down, they merged into one. And that became Yashoda Krishna, right? Because many commentators say that Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, right? Krishna will never leave Vrindavan. So how? How this other Krishna came and then, he took, no. So there's so many, options there, so many things there, right? But then when Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, then the commentators say, so when Akrura came to fetch Krishna and Balaram, on their way out, they took birth, they bathed in the Yamuna. So when Krishna bathed in the Yamuna with Akrura, Vasudeva Krishna came out and went to Mathura. Because Vrindavan Krishna will never leave Vrindavan. How can he leave? Right? So that was very interesting. All these differing commentaries and opinions, but does it not just, in one way it's confusing, but then beyond that, there is so much sweetness and bliss that comes out of hearing all of these varying opinions and different options. And that is what Krishna consciousness is. That we come together, even look, the commentaries have so many differing opinions, but you don't see the Goswamis fighting with each other. No, my version is right, my version is right. No, everyone just comes together. Well, of course, why? Why is yours not a possibility? Krishna can do whatever he likes. Who are we? He could do both. Who knows how many Krishnas there were, actually. We just said that the incarnations are as unlimited as waves in the ocean. Who are we to limit what Krishna can do? And even amongst our relationships with each other and the way we try to serve, who are we to limit the way Krishna can use the devotee in his service? And then coming back to the purport, Prabhupada is saying that Vasudeva, he was willing to sacrifice the child of his friend for his own. Will you kill me, Rukmini? To save yourself? Would you? And he knew Kamsa would kill her. Why would this one be any different? Kamsa killed all the previous ones, right? But even though, so interesting, even though Vasudeva knew that his son was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, still already, he probably held his baby in his hands for 20 minutes at that point or something, The affection and the attachment was so strong that even in those initial interactions with his child, his affection and his attachment was already grown, right? And Prabhupada says, how can you blame him? He was impelled by Yoga Maya because Krishna's will is Krishna's will, right? Even though Vasudeva comes from mixed devotion with that awe and reverence, it's not just complete pure love, still he has such love, right? So the devotee, no matter what level they're on, they are able to develop deep love for Krishna. It doesn't matter if their devotion is mixed or tinged with other things, the awe, the reverence, but we all have the capacity to grow in our love for Krishna through all of our interactions. So Vasudeva exchanges the babies, and then the final verse in this chapter is that Mother Yashoda is so exhausted by the labor of childbirth, that she doesn't know the gender of the child that she's given birth to. She's so exhausted, and did she give birth to one or two? Who knows? Who knows? She's so exhausted at this point that she just passes out from that exhaustion. She just knows she's given birth and it's done, and she's passed out from exhaustion. But in this purport, Prabhupada first he speaks about how Nanda and Vasudeva are such intimate friends. And I think actually it's somewhere else that they're actually half brothers. Yeah, same father, but obviously Vaishya mother and Kshatriya mother. They're actually half brothers. But not only are Nanda and Vasudeva such good friends, Devaki and Yashoda are also such good friends. And Prabhupada says, yes, their names may be different, but they are practically non-different personalities in that sense. The only difference, Prabhupada says, is that Devaki understands that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was born to her and then changed into Krishna, whereas Yashoda was not able to understand the kind of child born to her. But Prabhupada says, Yashoda was such an advanced devotee that she never regarded Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but simply loved him as her own child. Again, just loving Krishna for Krishna, not because of who he is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the summum bonum. No, I just love him for who he is, my child, nothing further than that. And no one in Vrindavan knew, actually, that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whenever some miraculous pastime happened, something wonderful, whenever a demon came and was killed, everyone was always so surprised, and they were so worried for Krishna's health and Krishna's safety, then like when you read about when Putana comes, and they find the baby on this huge witch's body, and then they grab him and they bathe him in cow urine and cow dung, and they start reciting all of these verses, and it's so sweet, right? It's so wonderful that they just cannot consider that Krishna must be God, or Krishna must be something, amazing. No, it's probably the demigods that intervened and are taking care of our baby and this and that. And that is the sweetness of the relationship a devotee can have with the Lord, that they can forget the position of the Lord as the Lord, right? And they can just love him without any regard for that. Just love him as the baby he is. Remember, I thought it was really funny, well, not really funny, but very sweet in that first text, that he transformed himself into a small human child. And I thought it was so interesting, specifically a small human child, in other words, into his original form. Not that he transformed himself into two-armed Krishna, no, a small human child, his original form, right? So sweet. That the devotee can have, or actually that we have as living entities, as spirit souls, the capacity for such a deep level of love with the Lord. And we all have that capacity. It's not just the exalted personalities, but all of us. And also in these texts, where Vasudeva is exchanging the baby, he's crossing over the Yamuna, something that also stood out is that Vasudeva just did what he had to do. He didn't stop and think why is Krishna making me do this? He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can go himself, right? He doesn't need me to do this. He can kill Kamsa if he wants in his sleep, or Kamsa wasn't sleeping, but he can do all of this. Why do I need to go through this whole thing? Why is he making life so difficult for me? I need to walk across the water and, all of this, go through this intense storm, leave Devaki alone. We've already been through such hell. We've lost so many children that they've been killed in front of us. Why? But Vasudeva understands that whatever is being presented in front of him is simply what Krishna has in store for him. And his only business is to just go through what Krishna has in store for him, and to experience it, to confront it, to cross over it in that way, right? And he just has to do the best he can do to successfully fulfill the Lord's desire for him. Not that, why do I need to do this? I'm such a... And Krishna just spoke to him and Devaki before this. And Krishna was highlighting, yes, we've been through this before. I've been your child already. So, he could say, well, I must be an exalted person if you've already been my child twice. I'm an expansion of Kasyapa. I'm the father of all, the demigods. I'm I'm not some ordinary living entity. Is Krishna forgetting everything I've done for him? I've performed tapasya in 3 lifetimes now, and very intense tapasya to have you as my child. I've gone through so much, not just in this life. And Krishna, have you forgotten everything I've done for you already? That now I have to go and do this again, further, more things. I have to, you're my child, but I can't even raise you. I have to leave you in the middle of nowhere and come back to the prison cell. You could take us out of this jail if you wanted. Why? Have you forgotten everything, Krishna? But there is a very nice quote by Kadamba Maharaj. We cannot rest on the glories of yesterday's service. Right? What happened yesterday is yesterday's business. Just because I addressed the deities yesterday doesn't mean I'm entitled to do it today. That was yesterday's service. Krishna had that in store for me yesterday. But today, what's the service? Gaura, please help us cook devotee lunch. Of course. That's what Krishna has in store for me today, right? So this is what I have to do, and I need to do it. Let me not waste my time speculating on who and what and why and how. He comes to the Yamuna, and it's the swirling, intense ocean. But he understands Krishna is in charge. And if I have to cross this ocean for Krishna, this river for Krishna, Krishna will make the arrangement by which I need to cross. So what happens? The Yamuna gives way. He doesn't have to do anything. The Yamuna gives way. In that way, Vasudeva does what he has to do because he knows Krishna wants me to do this, and the best I can do is do it as much as I can. And then he goes back, he puts his shackles back on. He doesn't run away. He's thinking, hey, I'm free now. Let me go. He comes back with the baby, puts the baby down, puts the shackles back on. He had the perfect opportunity to just run for it. But no, he's dharmic. He says, this is not what Krishna wants. Krishna wants me to go through this, so I'll go through it. And then he comes back, and then the baby girl starts crying. And with that cry, everyone wakes up. Everyone wakes up. The guards are shaken away. Everyone wakes up. And this chapter now speaks about the atrocities of King Kamsa, and again a bit about the activities of Yoga Maya. So Prabhupada says in this purport, when the inhabitants are woken up, he says that actually after this happens, Kamsa tries to kill the baby. Yoga Maya appears and say, well, the child is already born. Kamsa is pretty shaken and he begs for forgiveness, and they forgive him, Vasudeva and Devaki. And again, you can clearly see Yoga Maya, because how else would Vasudeva and Devaki forgive someone for killing 6 of their children? Well, one was a miscarriage. And how can you forgive someone just like that? And even Kamsa, why would he feel any remorse at that point? It must be Yoga Maya, because clearly he's not mentally stable. Obviously, he's in a lot of anxiety because his death has appeared. He knows that the one who will kill you has already been born. But Yoga Maya is such an interesting aspect of the Lord's energy and the way she works. And in the purport, Prabhupada speaks about, yes, everyone is woken up, and all the watchmen run to Kamsa to tell him that, the child is born, but Kamsa is already awake. He's lying in bed and he's awake and he's waiting. But all the watchmen start, shouting, yes, the baby's born. And Prabhupada says they're just like dogs, watchdogs in the middle of the night. Everything is quiet. One dog starts barking, another one chirps, and then they all just feed off each other. So these watchmen, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur compares them to dogs in the street, right? And Prabhupada goes further and he says that these watchmen or these dog, he compares them to, in our age, the dog-like politicians. One will start, and then one will, piggyback on the other, and all will start chiming. But also, like a little one, like, you ever at the airport at immigration, and the customs people, they catch you and they start, why are you here? What's in your bag? How long you going to be for? How much money is in your bank account? Do you have the right paperwork? That constant on you, that control, that so-called protection. Prabhupada says, all of these politicians, they think they're protecting their neighborhoods, their countries, their borders. But no. Prabhupada says that when we surrender unto Krishna, we are relieved of this so-called protection in that way. And Prabhupada also says, I think in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Sanatana Goswami is speaking to Lord Chaitanya, that how in the presence of light, darkness dissipates. So similarly, even though the energy of Yoga Maya and Mahamaya are there, but in the presence of Krishna, only Krishna's will prevail, nothing else. So yes, the final verse, they come and they tell him about the birth of the baby, but he is already awaiting the news very anxiously, and interestingly, he immediately takes action. Immediately jumps up, immediately goes. And imagine, he's disheveled, he's lying in bed, he hasn't had a bath, he just immediately comes or goes in this disheveled state to face, what he thinks is his death, actually. He knows his death is coming. And the devotee who was speaking on this verse was comparing, said, okay, look, think of Kamsa's disheveled state, and think of, for example, the gopis. In the middle of the night when they hear the flute, in their own disheveled state, they go immediately to find Krishna. But see the difference between the two. That difference in heart, that difference in motivation, and that difference in consciousness is the key to what devotional service actually is. So just in conclusion, this theme of crossing over and Krishna appearing in the jail cell and being taken to Vrindavan, I was thinking, when you think of a jail or a prison, it's an environment of helplessness. If you're in there, it's because you're like the lowest of the low and you've hit rock bottom and you're really in a very, very terrible space. But Krishna chose to appear in this space that's, associated with all of this negativity. Krishna comes into this space. Krishna will meet us in our lowest spaces, in our most confined spaces, in our most terrible spaces in life. And Krishna doesn't come, obviously, by normal birth. He manifested in the heart of Devaki and Vasudeva first, and from there comes. And that is the culmination of a devotee's life, when Krishna can manifest in our heart as he is, and we can be fully, fully conscious of his presence. When Krishna wants to go from one place to another, when he wants something to happen, Krishna will make all of the arrangements for what needs to happen. We just have to be an instrument and carry out what that is. Right? And we see even Kamsa's reaction to Krishna, the anxiety, the fear, the desperate hopelessness to cling on to his selfishness and his life because he's so afraid of death. Right? This is the way people react most of the time to the Lord in the world these days, right? Kamsa has so much to cross over in his own life to come face to face with Krishna, and eventually there he comes face to face with Krishna as death. But for the devotee, what do we have to cross over in our life to come to Krishna? Is it maybe that we have all of this theoretical understanding and knowledge of who Krishna is, but the relationship with Krishna now needs some work, the practical side. Not just to know Krishna as God, but to love him on his own in that way. Or are we stuck with maybe fear that needs to be crossed over and turned into trust? We see Vasudeva did that. No matter what came to him, he just trusted Krishna's plan for him without saying anything and carried on in that way. Or maybe it's, we could say, self-effort versus the arrangement of the Lord. We see that when Vasudeva picked the baby up, automatically the doors flew open. Sheshanaga appeared, the Yamuna parted ways. The only effort Vasudeva put in was trusting the Lord's plan for him and surrendering to it. And by that effort of surrender, divine arrangement took place. So I will stop there, just a little over time. If there's any comment, Mother Ranga, just. And Jai Prabhu as well.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
In your talk, you mentioned 7 children were killed. Actually, it was 6.
6, yes.
The one got away. It was Durga.
The one got
Took the form of Durga Devi. She was threatening Kamsa. So 6 actually were 6 sons. And then the contention of his birth. You know, in the Gopis' song of separation, they say, Janmana Vraja. It actually took birth in Vraj.
Took birth, Raj.
If you remember that wonderful song.
Janmana Raj.
And the umbilical cord was cut in the presence of Yasoda, that Krishna was.
Yes, the umbilical cord.
So that was proof that Krishna appeared in Vraj.
In Raj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna,
much.
Prabhu. So that has been settled. Krishna appeared in Raj. Mother Ranga Devi.
Hare Krishna. So as you were talking, I was thinking how Gaur Govindaswamy, he was making the point that when they told Nanda Maharaj that your son is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, don't treat him in that way. And he says, what? My son is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He steals. Vishnu doesn't steal. You telling me that he's Vishnu? He doesn't steal. He steals butter, and he cannot be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He carries my shoe on his head. Would the Supreme Lord do that?
Yeah.
No ways. And so in these ways, they were basically covered over by Yoga Maya to think that their son was the Supreme Lord. So so these are very sweet pastimes of the Lord in Vraja, in Vrindavan. So we should, basically read more of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And this is what Prabhupada has basically given us first, the Krishna book. So, for us to become more enlightened with the pastimes of Krishna in Vraja. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yeah. Krishna book. Yeah, Rukmini.
I was just following on that note, that I was thinking about the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and how when his parents, Sachimata, sees him like when he's still a child and cannot walk yet, but they start seeing footprints all over the house with the imprints of like Krishna's footprints, the imprints of like the conch and all these divine things on Krishna's feet, and they can't understand it. So then they come up with the idea that it must be the Shaligram Shila is running around the house. It must be the Shaligram Shila. Yeah. It can't be Krishna. It can't be Lord Chaitanya. So I thought it's interesting that how, and then the point about the Vaishnavacharyas, how Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. It feels almost, and this is like an intuition, it feels almost like it's the Vaishnavas who won't let Krishna out of Vrindavan. They contest this point like again and again and again because they won't let it be that Krishna leaves Vrindavan. My question was, in the text, I may have missed it, so if I'm just checking that, does Krishna ask to go to Vrindavan, or does Vasudeva decide to take Krishna to Vrindavan?
It's, there was one lecture, it's not stated as take me to Vrindavan, but in one of the previous verses where Krishna is responding to the prayers, it's one of those, I'm saying this but I mean that, and the commentators are like, yes, Krishna is saying this but he means this. I'll find it for you. It's one of the verses where the Sanskrit says one thing literally, but the meaning is, do this for me. Yeah. It's not, yeah, actually, it's not that he says, now you take me to Vrindavan, no. In that way.
And then the last thing I was thinking is just that you're mentioning about the versatility of Krishna, like in how he can comes in so many forms. And like a Janmashtami meditation I'm just thinking about is about how Krishna can appear in our consciousness. If he can appear in all these incarnations, he can appear in our consciousness. And that the crossing over is, Balaram will give us shelter when we're engaged in service. Because as Vasudeva is holding Krishna, we too can hold Krishna in our consciousness, and then we get the protection of Balaram, and then the material energy, parts. So I was just thinking about that.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anything? Okay. I think we're late already. Let's Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.